about it and stuff, and I like what it does. But before we get into that, I got a couple of questions for the group. I don't want you to tell me the answer because then the answers will be none of my business. But on April 15th, you're required to file your tax return. Most people in the United States either owe the government something at that time or they get a refund. Right? Now, I bet you anybody here who filed last year can tell me what they paid, what they owed, or how much of a refund they got. Right? Anybody? You don't have to. Could you tell me within a little bit?
Yeah.
Don't tell me. I don't want to know. I just
no,
don't know
but most people don't know how much they paid. They know how much their refund is.
That was the next question. Yeah. They either know what they owe or they know how much they got in a refund, but very few people can tell you how much total tax they paid. Okay? So that's one of the things.
Well, that's a scary thought.
Yes, it is.
That's a very scary thought.
That's exactly why it's done the way it is.
Right.
So you don't know, right?
You don't know. Well, you know if you read the document, but most people are only interested in, do I owe them any money or did I get a refund?
And how can I get this done so fast to get it out of my hair?
What's line 28?
Is it line 28?
That's total.
No, that's right. So it's line 37?
37 is the AGI. That's
37 is...
Yeah.
No, that's adjusted gross income.
No, remember.
Other taxes, payments.
27 is other income.
Federal income tax withheld is 62.
Yeah.
60, okay.
Okay. Well, whatever it is. 72. These are your 72 are your total payments, and then you go on to the next line, how much you overpaid or how much you underpaid. But nobody can tell you if you ask them. If you go out and stop somebody on the street and say, how much did you pay in income tax last year? They will say, oh, I didn't pay anything, I got a refund.
Yeah.
But if they ever looked at that number and said, oh my God, they would be shocked. And this is done on purpose. One of the great things about socialism and communism is the first thing, if you read their tenets and how they're supposed to bring these about, is a very progressive income tax. And that never does anything, but it never raises up the lowly, it brings down the wealthy. So everybody's at a low level of poverty. Okay, so over the years everybody talks about what are we going to do about the tax system. It's 75,000 pages long. If you call the IRS and ask them a question twice, you'll get two different answers. You go to a tax preparer, they all will interpret it differently. It's basically out of control. It doesn't make any sense and is out of control. So people come up with, what are we going to do about it? So you've got what we have now, which is a progressive income tax structure put in by that great socialist Woodrow Wilson. And the other plan that you hear a lot about is the flat tax, where you take away all the deductions, everything. Everybody pays the same rate, and you file it on a postcard, fill in the numbers. I earn this much, I owe this much, mail it in. So that's one way to do it. Now the fair tax is a totally different concept. Before we get into exactly how it works, you've got to understand who in this country pays tax. So just as a general throw out, who pays tax? Anybody want to throw people at me?
People who work.
People who work pay tax. Who else?
Approximately, it ranges from about 50 to 53%.
I don't care about the number. I'm just, who?
Well, it's anybody who has unearned or earned income over a certain level. Corporations pay taxes, but they always pass it off to their consumers.
Yeah.
Not only corporations.
Any business.
Here's my illustration. You go down to the store and you buy a loaf of bread. It costs $1. The people who are involved in building that loaf of bread or baking it, you start with a farmer. He grows wheat. He sells the wheat. If he makes a profit or he has money over what his expenses at the end of the year, he pays income tax. Where did the money come to pay that income tax?
It's going to the wheat.
from the sale of the wheat. So it's embedded in the sale of the wheat. The wheat goes to the miller. The miller does what? He grinds the wheat, he sells it to the baker. Same thing. If he makes money, he has to pay tax. The cost of that tax comes out of the sale of the flour to the baker. Same thing happens at the bakery. The cost of the income tax that the corporation pays or the individuals pay is embedded in the cost of the bread. It goes to the retail store. Now you've got the baker's income tax, the miller's income tax, or the farmer, the miller, the baker, the retail store. You buy the loaf of bread. Embedded in that loaf of bread are the taxes that all of those people pay. The only person who pays any income tax in the United States is the final user of any commodity or service. Everything else is embedded in the cost of what you bought.
It's individuals.
The consumer.
The consumer pays every bit of the tax. And they'll say, oh no, we're going to tax the corporation. What Jackie said is exactly true. The corporation just embeds that cost into what they have to sell their product for. So in the end, the only person who pays any tax is the final consumer of a product or service, if it's taxed. So,
Jeez.
a congressman from Georgia, whose name escapes me at the moment, and the radio talk show host, Neil Bortz, thank you, put together, I don't know whether they were the initial people who thought this thing up or they got the ideas from somewhere else. They said, okay, let's do what we'll call a fair tax. And what we'll do is we'll shut down the whole IRS system.
So repeal the 16th Amendment.
Yes, well, that's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't jump ahead.
Yeah, don't do it. It doesn't.
He worked on this now.
Sorry.
I think it's good.
Go ahead. Have a little.
No, that's it. Just
That's a good idea, too. But you wouldn't have to do that.
But it'd be a
But it would
darn
be a
good
good
idea.
Anyway, so their idea was we'll shut down the whole IRS system. We'll get rid of individual income taxes, corporate taxes, death taxes, any kind of tax that you file through the IRS will go away.
Social Security, Medicare go through.
You've read this book.
I know this stuff. I don't know that. I know what the IRS
We get rid of the
does.
Social
I know
Security tax,
taxes.
Medicare tax, anything. Any federal tax that is paid by anybody would go away. And you say, well, how can they do that? They lose all that money. No. They're going to put, if you look at that loaf of bread or any product, they say that by the time you take out all the taxes, the price would be, the value of that product would be down about 22%. So if you're paying $1 for a loaf of bread, it's really, what, 78 cents it's worth. So they say, we will institute a sales tax on everything new of 23%. And you go, oh my God, it's going to cost us $1.23 for a loaf of bread. Well, it may for the first week or two, but everybody's going to find out. A classic example of what happened with this was when the federal government forgot to redo a tax on the airlines. And the airlines go, oh my God, we're going to make a fortune because these people forgot. They don't know that this tax isn't there. And so they were charging for their tickets the same prices they had been before. But they were making a huge profit because they weren't paying that tax. So some guy, one of the airlines said, we can get more business if we lower our rates and we can still make the same profit we were making before. Well, within a month, all the prices went down by the amount that the tax was missing. So what's going to happen is the loaf of bread is going to cost you $1.23 for a couple of weeks until Wonder Bread decides that, no, my God, we can sell that for a lot less because we're not paying all that tax. So they drop their prices. And what's going to happen is the price of it should go back down to about where they were. And the other thing you have to understand about this whole system is this is not a spending cut. It's a tax change. At 23%, you would get the same revenue you're now getting from the current tax system. No more,
From the current people that are paying the tax.
Yes.
But the people that aren't paying taxes, it would see a cash influx into the system because all of a sudden now when they bought the bread, they're paying their 22%.
Well, we're going to get to that.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry.
You know,
Oh, yeah, now it's you.
So you're thinking, you know, he's good, he's thinking. He's thinking because that's what happens. Because now you've got this tax system. You've got an underground economy out there that is not paying any tax. I mean, you pay your gardener $100 in cash, he doesn't pay the tax. You go to your local drug dealer, you buy heroin, you don't pay the tax. He doesn't file a tax return. It doesn't matter under this system because if he goes out and buys anything, if he goes out and buys a new Mercedes, he's going to pay the tax. If he goes out and buys all his gold jingles, he's going to pay the tax. So he can't escape it.
Can I go for a ride in your new Mercedes? Okay.
As soon as I get it.
Okay.
I gotta pay the damn tax.
And this is the other thing about the system, the way they run. And this, by the way, has been introduced in Congress almost every 2 years since they wrote the thing up, but it never gets anywhere. Mainly because it takes away the ability of the government to do social engineering through tax policy. You wouldn't have this problem with the Tea Party and the IRS if the IRS didn't exist. You bring money into the Tea Party, you spend it for whatever you want. But if you spend it, you're going to pay tax.
You're gonna put all those people out of work?
I don't care. They can go do something useful.
Tom, now, if he buys a Mercedes and he pays the 23% tax, what does the guy who bought it, I mean, is the tax, and buys it and resells it a second time? What
You
happens?
don't pay tax on used anything.
That's what I wanted you to
If you
say.
buy a new house, you pay the tax. When you resell it, nobody pays any tax. Only this tax will be on everything, and not only
The dealer wouldn't pay a tax when
the
they
dealer will pay tax on a new vehicle. But if you go buy a used vehicle, there's no tax.
Well,
Only
But the
the
dealer,
person.
no, the dealer just has an inventory. He doesn't, quote, own them. They're not registered in his name.
No.
But he marks them
Yeah.
up, he marks them up accordingly so
Right.
he can make a profit.
Right. Yeah, but,
Yeah.
but
And the
the
tax is
dealer is not the original owner. Yeah.
so he wouldn't be taxed on it.
But he buys his Mercedes, and at the end of the year, he says, oh, I don't like this one, I need a new one. When he sells that, there's no tax involved. It's just he finds somebody to buy it, or he trades it into a dealer, or whatever. There's no tax on that. Anything used.
Well, it goes to register it.
What?
Well, it goes
Pays the
to
property
register
tax.
it
But
in
the thing
Nevada.
is that
Now,
we're
wait.
used to
We're
looking
only
at
talking
that.
federal.
I know.
We're only talking federal.
But we're also
Hey, I want to
used
buy your Mercedes when it gets a little
I'll let you know,
bit.
but
We're used to looking at things. It's hard for us to see things any other way other than how we have had to deal with
it's a
it.
paradigm shift.
It is a paradigm shift, yeah.
Well, the other thing is the tax is imposed on services. So when you go to your doctor, you're going to pay tax. When you go to your lawyer, you're going to pay the tax. It's
Really?
embedded in everything. Yes.
Has to be.
But
Yeah.
their costs, well, the other thing that happens is when the IRS goes away and a company comes along and they say, okay, we want to build a widget. And this widget is a great product, we'll be able to sell lots of them. Usually when a company sits down and they make business decisions, their first thing is, what are the tax consequences of this decision going to be? All that goes away. All of their worrying about tax preparation, income tax withholding, all that goes away. Accountants are going to be hurting. CPAs are going to be hurting.
They just have to do other
Tax
How
lawyers are going to be hurting.
will the businesses pay their tax on services? The doctor's office, now they have.
If you go in and you go pay a doctor's office visit and it costs you $100, $23 of that is going to the government.
But now the doctor's office has to pay some on to
Every 3
Okay.
months, the doctor's
Yeah.
office should show their total sales.
Pay-
Yes, and
pay their
20%
estimated
check
taxes,
reference.
like.
Well, it's sort of, I would imagine it's like what businesses do now, where they collect sales
Yeah.
tax and they have to
Yes,
mail it
well,
in.
exactly. That's
And
exactly the
actually
point.
let the
That's
state
exactly their
collect
thinking
it
of
and
these
forward
people. When people say, how are we going to implement this thing? Well, it's already there in every cash register in the country in a state that has a sales tax. So it's already there. All you have to do is change the software a little bit. So it's easy to implement. Okay, what are the other problems we have? Okay, the gripes that people have, they're saying, this is going to hurt the poor because they're going to have to pay the tax.
Yay.
It's about time.
Oh, my God.
So, built into this 23% and why you're paying more than what you would think. Oh, by the way, they base that 23% on the fact that if you look at what's embedded tax in all the products you buy, it goes as low as about 15% and as high as about 30%, depending on what you buy and more. And they average about to 22, and they say we'll charge 23. The other thing they're going to do to get around this business of the poor will pay tax, where they don't now. They say, okay, every year the federal government computes a poverty income level.
Now you got the IRS back.
Huh?
Now you have the IRS back.
Oh, and we'll use the Department of Commerce or something. Get rid of the guy.
Health and Human Services.
Whatever. We're going to get rid of those. We'll get rid of those today, but that's another problem. So anyway, they compute the poverty level, and they say, okay, if you spend on basic necessities, not luxury goods, basic necessities, so much of that account, you would have paid so much in tax. So if the poverty level for a family of four is $30,000 and they're going to spend $25,000 of that on shelter, food, clothing, whatever, the government gives them a credit card. Well, actually, it gives everybody. I don't care if you're a guy with no income at all. Well, you have to have income or you won't get it because you won't have anything to spend. Or you're Bill Gates. You get a little card, and it has a value every month of what you would have paid in tax that you just take in when you buy something. You use that until it's depleted every month. And it has the amount of money that you would have spent for your family on basic necessities. It's the tax value of that. So you're using that. So you're not, if you're below the poverty level, you're not paying any tax, period. Still, so that's the argument for the social engineering people who say, no, we can't do that because we'll tax the poor. So, and everybody gets that card. And they say, well, that's hard to administer. No. It's like a refilled, it's got the coding in it, and every month it just recharges itself when you swipe it through the computer with that amount of money. No? You don't understand.
No, I understand. No, I understand. I just want to present a counter argument when you're ready.
Well, go ahead.
Okay, so back up just one moment. Why change the tax code? What are you attempting to accomplish?
We're attempting to save a hell of a lot of money and make things so that you take away the power of the IRS.
Okay.
Do anything to you. Take away the power of the government to use social engineering through tax policy.
Okay, so
make things simple so that April 15th just becomes another nice spring day.
Okay, so given the fact that I would like to see the IRS abolished because they have way too much information about us.
Yes.
Every brokerage firm, every bank,
yes.
Every employer has to, casinos have to do W-2Gs, 1099s, you name the whole list of stuff. You would have a lot of... It all goes away.
You're going to give that card out.
No, that's not the thing.
That's not the thing. Okay, so basically, if you stop and look at how much money, it's something like, what is it, $3 to $6 billion a year is spent on having tax returns done.
It's probably a lot more than that.
Yeah, and that doesn't count all the time. And, you know, the number of employees who are, I understand that. I think that as soon as you do that, as you mentioned, when you start taking the taxes out of the cost of the goods will start dropping back down to a level where there's no net effect. Trying to give the poor a subsidy merely allows government to continue to social engineer because
Jackie,
they have
not just the poor. Everybody gets the subsidy.
Then why not do the following, which is, you know, like the sales tax in Nevada. You don't pay a sales tax on food bought in the grocery store.
Okay.
Okay, so so one of the arguments of progressives is that sales tax is regressive. The poor
Yes.
spend more of their income on things than the rich. Well, okay, so the rich are investing. They're saving their money. And the problem with that is what? You know, I look at this and I just say everybody should have skin in the game. And I don't, you know, if you buy
Okay.
anything, you're going to pay a tax.
Okay, fine. But you've got to be able to get this thing through, and one of the things they did was put this what they call a prebate on it. But you're right, most of the people who are wealthy don't get their income from work. They get it from investment,
You mean like Warren Buffett?
like Warren Buffett.
Right.
He doesn't pay, what they say, Warren Buffett pays less tax than his secretary.
Yeah, because he's
In
playing
this
all
system,
long-term
it
capital
doesn't matter.
gains.
So long as Warren Buffett doesn't buy anything, he doesn't pay any tax.
No,
So
he's
long
the
as
less
the secretary
percentage.
doesn't buy anything, he doesn't pay any tax. But if Warren Buffett goes out and buys a $70 million airplane, he pays the tax.
No,
It doesn't
I'm
matter.
not against the fair tax. I am against anything that requires the government to continue to track your income. In order to give you this means you continue to have an IRS.
Right,
Whether you
but
call it the
that's
IRS or not, you continue to have that.
Everybody-
I'd like to see all of that go away,
Okay.
period.
Everybody gets the prebate.
But how do
It
they get the
doesn't-
prebate? Because you're tracking people, you're
That's
looking
right.
at their
You're not,
income.
you don't have to. It doesn't matter who you are, you're going to get the same amount.
What?
It doesn't
Then
matter
why-
who you are, you're going to get the same amount.
Sure.
It's going to depend on
Proportionally,
what they compute the poverty level to
Oh.
be.
So are you going to count
Bill
people's
Gates,
dependents?
Bill Gates gets the same prebate that some low-life druggie living in a rehab center gets.
Okay, so does every American get these
Families.
cards?
It'll be families.
And so somebody has to say
Yeah.
how much you get because you have a certain number of people in your family.
That's it.
Once again, you have to have somebody tracking
Okay.
you as individuals.
Well, there goes my deductions for the
And
cats.
you can object to that. You can object to that part, but you're really going to get hammered by those people who say, "Oh my God, these poor people are going to have to pay tax." So that's the only real reason they put that in was because
Why do you think this method is better than the flat tax?
because the flat tax still requires that you
An IRS?
pay a tax on April 15th.
Well,
You have to give them how much money you earn. You have to tell them how much money you earn. You're giving them information they don't really need to know. You have to compute the tax and you have to pay it. They still have to have. Well, it would be better than what we have now, a flat tax,
Yeah.
But I
this
think
is even
this-
better.
I think
Everybody
this
has
is better.
skin in the game.
because it takes away. You got to read the book because they go into it and they show how much money is lost just complying with the tax system. How much money just goes underground.
economic
The other
efficiency.
thing they talk about is so long as the only time the tax is imposed is when a product is sold at retail. So if you're building a product and you export it, you don't pay any tax.
What are you going to do with unearned income and earned income?
Not
Doesn't
taxed.
matter.
Doesn't matter.
If you go out and buy something, you pay the tax.
So you still, okay, yeah.
There is no
No,
such thing
yeah.
as earned or unearned income. It goes away. That's the whole point.
Yeah.
There's no, I didn't earn the income from work. What's that under income? Interest income, that sort of thing.
Right.
Unearned is, interest, dividends, capital gains.
Yeah, okay, that all goes away. It doesn't exist.
Because you're going to go buy a Mercedes.
If you go buy your Mercedes, you pay
That's
the
how
tax.
you're going to pay it.
Oh, it's similar, the prebate is similar to how, I'm not real smart about these things, I'm not a numbers person, but similar to what they do in Alaska, all the citizens get the same amount based on oil sales,
yeah.
oil revenue, and they just divide it by the citizens.
Same
right?
thing, same sort of thing.
All right,
Tax-free, and then when they spend it, it's taxed.
and when they spend it, it's taxed,
Yeah.
but they get it tax-free.
And everybody consumes, and so everybody.
Everybody's going to pay that.
Yeah.
The thing is,
Okay.
you recover a lot of money from the underground economy. That isn't, nobody pays tax on because people simply don't file returns.
Yeah.
Now, underground economy as in drugs.
Drugs,
Or people who work under the table.
Your gardener.
people working under the
Yeah.
table, you know, not on
Illegals.
books.
Illegal
They're
aliens.
sending it back to
Whatever.
Mexico.
Yeah. that's
If they
what
buy
I'd like to see
something in
them
the
have to
United
pay for
States,
that.
they pay the tax. And
Everyone
there's-
is a consumer.
And you think you can go to Walmart and say, hey, I don't want you to pay, I want to get out of paying this tax.
But you can do it at Ready Golf.
Well, you might do it at Credit Card, why not? But they're going to have to account for everything they sold
Yeah.
somehow. Anyway,
It's
What else
better
was
than
it?
what we have now.
it's far better.
Anything, almost anything is better than what we have
Yeah.
now.
And you get rid of the IRS.
If we had enough determination, if we had enough people who were saying,
To understand it.
that would understand what was happening, that's the problem.
Yeah, there isn't much of an educational system on this type of thing that occurs in America, and so you've got all the left who simply watches and listens and is told what to think and speak, and so
Well, you've got a
It's hard to do an
system,
education.
that took from about
1930.
1913 to 19
Right.
into
20
the
years.
30s, about 20-year period where when they first put in the income tax, people weren't making, in numbers that we're used to hearing now, people weren't making a lot of money. A $3,000 a year income was pretty good. So they put the tax rate on, what, I think over $10,000 a year, the first income. I don't remember what the limits are, but if you read this FairTax book, they've got all this stuff.
I thought it was $100,000, and
I
I
don't
thought it was
know. I don't
1%.
know.
I've actually
Pay
seen a
tax
copy of the
when they
very first
Do you have
income
a
tax
copy
form,
of the
but I
book
can't.
here?
I have an audio, I do it on audio. I listen to it.
oh, so you don't have
I don't
a
have
picture
I don't
of
have
the...
the paper.
It doesn't read.
Hey, Tom. It's interesting to hear that all the comments are addressed to government social engineering. But you know that the most engineering that takes place in the IRS tax code is by interest money.
Fine.
And the
Yeah.
poor don't have a
Goes
dime
away.
of interest money. But it's the corporations. I mean, for instance, here I am, a
Goes away.
hedge fund broker.
Yeah,
And what do you think I pay for tax?
I don't have any
You
idea.
pass it on.
No, but just, I mean, it's my income.
I don't know.
Of
If
course
it,
you do.
if it,
Because they all get their income as the same as if you were collecting, as if you had invested.
Okay.
So they get 15%. They
So you
pay
get
no
capital
more than
gains rate.
15% of anything they earn.
Fine, they won't pay that. When
Well,
they're
I'm
taxed, they'll pay it when they buy something.
But what I'm saying is that we should be much more concerned with the engineering that goes on by our elected officials.
Fine. If
That's-
we take
that's where all the sin
If we
happens.
take the ability away from them to do anything, well, this is one thing. It's not, like I said, it has nothing to do with changing the way the government spends the money or corrupt politicians or anything else. It just takes away their ability to do things through the tax code. It gets rid of a 75,000-page system that nobody can understand. You have no responsibility to file a tax return on April 15th.
It is strictly having to do with consumption,
Consumption
nothing
tax.
else.
If you save money, you don't pay tax. If you invest it, you don't pay tax. If you spend it, you pay the tax, and that's what it comes down to. They're talking about bringing companies back to the United States to manufacture goods because they won't pay any tax, especially if
For
they
10
export
years,
it.
if you-
No.
no.
Nothing.
But yet you say this has been introduced every year for how many years?
About every session.
And our politicians won't pass it.
No, they won't.
So,
Because we can't get enough pressure on them to do it. People,
Because all the money is
They
in
think-
making sure that I have a special tax for my business.
Right.
And the other guy
Exactly.
says, and I want a special tax for
For my
my
business.
business. And
Or
I don't want to
exemption.
be paying taxes like you and I do on our income because they make up this belief that somehow, because my money comes from investments, I should only pay an investment tax on my income. It is just incredible.
Well,
it is.
the more
And that would all go away.
Yeah, the more cynical part of me says that every once in a while Congress cleans up the tax code, they clean up the
Yeah,
form,
right.
so that they can resell the same favors again.
That's a good point.
Let me tell you one, if you're very worried about what they know about you, I want you guys to listen to what could happen if we really go astray. The country of Norway, now it's only 4.5 million people, okay? But here's how the taxes work in Norway. On the 15th of April, you get an email. And it's your entire tax form is already filled out by the government. There's a block at the bottom that says, agree or disagree. Click on agree, and that's it.
We already have that. It's just that they don't tell you that they have it.
Then, guess what happens? On the next, I think it's next week or something like that afterwards, every single person's tax return is online.
Oh,
So
really?
if you want to know what, the
No privacy
most
at all.
favorite thing in Norway is that day when they post all the earnings or tax returns so everybody can click. And I can sit right here, get on my computer, and if I want to know what my brother and sister-in-law made,
No
I can
kidding.
just click on their name.
Ooh, that's
geez.
terrible. That's awful.
Well, supposedly that's
certainly
a
coming in our country.
well, supposedly that's a felony, but
It's not really because they...
no, sharing tax information
Oh,
by the
yeah.
IRS is a felony,
But
and
as
that's
far
why
as,
Lois
like,
Lerner's not
wages-
testifying.
That's
That's the
here.
only way we have ever
But the
known,
wages of like the
so-
firemen and the overtime and all of that,
All that
that-
public
something-
employees.
that's public
amazing.
information.
Yeah.
They post it all the time, which is
Well, they're
good
on
because that's how we
social life.
find out.
Well, we're paying their salary, we should know what they're making.
Oh, I'm not saying I disagree, I'm just saying
But
we
your
do
tax
that.
return
But tax
as it
returns are different.
fits now, what you deduct and all that's personal. That should
Yeah,
not
it should be
online.
personal, but it's not
Well, he's saying
really.
that's in Norway.
I know.
Yeah, so
But that's Norway.
But we're getting so
Yeah.
close to
We're
that.
getting close to that.
So, well,
You-
no,
You're right about that.
the IRS, they calculate your tax return independently. They have 100% compliance in all W-2s. They also have 100% compliance in all 1099s. So every 1099 that you ever get, they already have it. They already have all that information on you.
Yeah. Exactly.
Right.
And that's if you
So
fail
better
to
claim
list
it.
one 1099, he'll kick it out in a minute.
Yeah, you'll get out of it. It may take them 3 years, but they'll get you.
Yeah.
Anyway, what else is good about this thing? Manufacturing, selling overseas without profit, bringing manufacturing back to the United States.
It's all the efficiency of getting rid of all these regulations and tax
Exactly.
compliances.
How
And-
do you put pressure on the politicians to pass it?
I don't know.
And it doesn't matter who you elect either. The day they get in,
They get a
they're no
lobotomy.
longer...
That's what happens.
So what do you think of a constitutional amendment that number 1 repeals the 16th Amendment and then
They're not
puts it in its place?
Well, we could
Jackie,
do
that
that with
But that would
the
have to be,
Conference
you'd
of the
have to,
States.
you'd
Yes.
have to have a government that respected the Constitution for that to mean
Well, you
anything.
can force them to do that because if we did what Mark Levin says, call it Constitutional Convention of the States, they could do that, and the Congress, federal government can't override it.
That's
They
right.
can't say no.
The problem is,
It's
enough
a fact,
people
yeah.
do not understand it. To put
The
pressure on
educational
them.
process.
Well, that's, I guess, a good part of it.
Okay, so we need to actually come up with some good arguments about the quote poor. You know, you want to have these cards. Maybe if there is a way of doing that without the government tracking everything, that would be fine. But other than that, you know, the next question is, so how are they worse off? How, you know, now they don't pay any income. Now there are people who get what's called earned income credit, which means they actually get money back from the
Yeah,
Yeah, I was
government
gonna say,
that they
can't
never
get their free
paid.
refund.
Okay,
You
but
guys get a refund.
That would stop.
Why would you let the government use your money for 11 months and...
oh, you've come across
But they
people
don't
that
even
say,
pay
I use this as my savings program.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
No, they don't.
Well, they
But-
think they do.
No, but earned
Yeah.
income credit
That's
is
their
different.
reality,
The
even though-
government actually gives you, it's
Doesn't
more
go
than just
there.
returning your tax money to you. They actually give you
extra
more.
money.
And, they reward you for having kids.
I've never been able to do that.
Yeah, but,
I don't think that we can change anything until we have term limits.
The
term
election
limits
of
is...
it.
Yeah.
Well,
Oh, yeah.
Again,
But I-
the fair tax has nothing to do with that sort of thing.
But
No, you're right, though.
But I disagree just a little bit, because what happens if you could only serve, I don't care, for instance, if it's every 2 years, we can bump congressmen up to 4 years and senators for 10, I don't care, but they can't be reelected, because that takes all the incentive out of getting all that money, which they say they spend over 50% of the time is just raising money for themselves. So if you don't have to deal with lobbyists because you don't need their money, then
Okay,
Okay, well,
you have a point.
so, you know,
then all those tax things will go away too.
yeah, so term limits are very popular right now, and in a lot of ways I support them. But I have always found that the problem with them is that you have a lame duck. So you have somebody in office after, you know, when they're about to be term limited out, who has absolutely no responsibility to the electorate that voted him in. What would be nice would be if the American people learned how to term limit their own politicians and not just keep returning them into their city.
Everybody
happen.
Jackie, I got a problem.
That'll never happen.
Actually, it's Tom's idea, but I think you and I agree. I do not, I mean, there's got to be, the way in which your book says to track the poor and to help them with the little card.
No, everybody gets the card.
Everybody gets the card, but what use of it, what good is that card to a Bill Gates?
Absolutely nothing. But he gets it.
But he gets it.
But there's no balance on it. They'll never,
Everybody gets the same amount.
He gets a balance up to the poverty level for the tax.
Okay, so-
oh, up to the poverty level, not as in...
Okay, so how-
No, it only goes to the poverty level.
22 and a half or 23% of $1 billion.
Like the Alaskans getting the check for the oil. They all get the
So,
same amount.
well, no, but you're going to stop it at the poverty level.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's the only thing he can use on his credit card.
On this card,
Which he does on the
Bill
first,
Gates
second,
goes to Walmart and he wants to buy a dozen donuts or whatever.
To the right.
And he wants to buy a dozen donuts, then he could use that card and pay for them until that card's depleted for that month.
And then from that point forward, he pays out.
He pays it out of his pocket. The same thing with somebody who is below the poverty level.
Okay.
They get that same amount. They can go to the store. You can use that money any way they want.
This is beginning to sound like
understanding of that.
mincome.
But now your problem, as Jackie said, is your tracking.
Well, no.
If you're going
It doesn't matter.
if you're going to give
Everybody gets it.
okay,
It
that
doesn't matter
time
what your income.
problem. How do you administer this? How do you know who exists and who you're giving it to? I mean, how would you game the system? Oh, I think I declare about 10 kids I don't have.
Doesn't matter. You're going to get the same amount.
It just
No,
has to
per
do with-
person.
No.
But
Oh,
it has to do
she does have a point there.
For a family?
Yeah, but not all of us have a family.
Not all of us have a family, so the poverty level depends on the number of members in your family.
Okay.
That is true.
Now,
I don't know.
my recommendation is to grow a backbone and basically say that
No.
everybody in this country needs to pay something towards the running of this country. If
Okay.
you
You got to have skin in the game.
and
You can have skin in the game because
because if you buy into this, what are you going to do about the poor? You know, I said, well, they've got food banks. They buy used things. They're not paying anywhere near the consumption tax that other people are paying.
That
Or
would
you
be
take
true.
the basic necessities. You take food and you take medicine and doctors out of the sales tax range. Okay, but as soon as you say, well, what about the poor, and you start trying to address that issue, you're back into social engineering
Okay.
again.
Here's the thing. I think the way I got it, they put that provision in this plan because they had so much resistance from people who are advocates for the poor. In reality, if you just didn't do that, the poor would still be ahead because even those who do pay a tax would stop paying the tax. Prices would go down anyway. They would be ahead in either case. But they'd be more ahead if you gave them this prepaid. I don't like it either, but that's the way.
Make an argument for having it apply across the board to everybody, and hammer out the argument and say, no, they're not really worse off. No, it's not really this. I mean, put the stuff together. Because as soon as you start making exceptions for any of this, you open the door for them making even more exceptions and more social engineering.
That's probably a good argument.
Yes.
Send it to Neil Bortz.
Okay.
That sounds good.
So what are we going to do with people who are handicapped and can't make a living? We're just going to...
They're still going to get whatever.
No, so
they don't make money, so you can't. You don't have a skin in the game.
Yeah, they do, because they do get income from somewhere.
No. Well,
what?
Now because the government pays that.
That hasn't changed. We're not changing any of
not
health,
Social
education,
Security,
welfare, anything. All we're doing
Medicare,
is changing
Medicaid,
the tax system.
don't change.
If you're getting a payment because you're disabled and you're getting a payment from Social Security, when you go out and spend the money, you're going to pay a tax.
You're still going to get the same benefit from the government.
The item you buy is going to cost you about what it cost you before.
already.
Yes.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
If they need it,
But it has nothing to do with changing anything about...
And if they complain enough, the government will raise their
It's just changing the
benefits.
tax system.
No, the only thing that I ever look at that, the only two exceptions that I think can ever really be made are for medical and for food, and that's it. But even there, I'm willing to give up on that if it makes it cleaner and people say, okay, that's just the way it goes.
Actually, you don't need to do medical, because when the doctor goes and buys the Mercedes, he pays that.
Yeah. The thing is, all the costs like medical expenses are going to go down. Maybe not so much. Their big problem is paying insurance transactions. And if they could get rid of having to pay insurance transactions, they would be well off. But they're still going to get rid of... If you go into a doctor's office, he's got lab technicians, secretaries, medical assistants. He has to pay tax. Okay. That's all that paperwork he has goes away. His costs go down.
Yeah, so what I'd like to see is I'd like to see Social Security and Medicare go away too.
That's part of it. They go away.
FICA taxes. No, they still...
In the FairTax system, the FICA taxes goes away.
So this is revenue neutral with including those programs?
Yes.
Wow. I thought it would be higher than that.
Yes.
That's like
Well, where do we
everybody
get our
getting
SSI check going to depend on social
what?
security? Our SSI check, where do we get that
It
from?
comes at it, all that 23% goes into the general fund, just like your Social Security tax does now.
It's not supposed to,
There is
Since
no trust fund.
1965.
That money is coming out of the general
not
fund.
anymore,
They
thank
took
you.
the lockbox and threw away the box.
They kept
No, they just kept writing little IOUs and throwing
all
them
that goes away. You still get your Social Security. Nothing in the, you got to understand, this only changes the way you're taxed. It doesn't change anything else about how the government operates.
Oh, I hope so. Like all the wars off the books.
That's still there. You
We
got
don't
to
want
change
that.
the politicians.
Well, stop and think. Here's another sales item. If you're actually getting rid of FICA taxes
Yes.
and Medicare taxes,
Yes.
say your typical employer is paying half of that freight.
Yes.
They also get a deduction off their taxes for it. And you as an employee, when you look at your W-2, you see how much you pay.
Yes.
All right. So once again, just like corporations don't pay taxes, they aren't paying your FICA taxes. So that's basically your earnings that they just took away from you to pay So one of the biggest arguments about the poor, well, they really do pay their share. Don't you know that? Because they're working and they're paying FICA and that's really regressive, and it's those rich people who make more than the limits that are getting away with murder on all this
Your
stuff.
first lesson as a child of powerlessness is when you receive your first paycheck from a company and you see that FICA withdrawal and you go, where'd it go?
So here is an
And that
argument.
employer says, I put it over here.
Here is an argument for the poor. there's no more FICA coming out of people's paychecks. They automatically are getting an 8-point-something% increase. And in actuality, if the employer passes on what he was paying for you, you just got a 16.3% raise. Now you can pay the sales tax.
That's all built into this thing.
That, you know,
No, but
What happens to health
I-
insurance?
it'd be great for
Different
small
problem.
business.
That's not a
Extremely
tax.
good for small business.
No,
Well, it is
so I
not,
mean,
because that's what the judge said.
I mean, you look at, I support the fair tax, you know, period, I support it. I'm just playing devil's
Well,
advocate
we gotta
trying
be prepared.
to pick out the bad things.
You know, there's most people don't realize that people who get health insurance through their company, where they get to deduct the cost of it, for the average guy who goes out and pays it with after-tax dollars, whereas they get it with their pre-tax dollars.
That's
Right. And if you're self-employed,
Yeah.
and you're not eligible for a group plan through your spouse or any other method, you get a deduction for your health insurance off of the, it's on the front page of the AGI.
Yeah, I mean, we issue 1,500 1099s every year,
And you get a deduction
and we offered them a health
for,
insurance plan, but it was deducted right out of their check, the cost of it. We didn't match it, we didn't help it, we just said, if you want to buy it from Tom, here's the guy you can get it from. Cost you $18 a week. It came right off their 1099.
Right.
Okay, so part of the adjusted gross income.
But there wouldn't be a
Part of your magic.
There wouldn't be a
It's
1099.
self-employed health insurance, self-employed
Be a
tax
1099
or qualified plans. No, the rest of them don't apply.
See, because-
Basically, those are the ones that you get, that your employer gets, and if you happen to be self-employed, you get to do, it's a deductible part of your self-employment tax. So, so you get the same benefits, and they get added back in.
I think you're right. I
But you have
don't
to
think
make
we
it
should
2%.
do that prebate thing, but the only argument for it is a way to mollify the politicians.
Just hammer home, they're
Well,
getting a
maybe the real answer.
16.3% raise in their income.
I just see it as a big wreck, because the first thing happens is little Joey's going down to the corner of Vega, whatever it is, grocery store, to pick up a loaf of bread that he didn't have the card. Or he's lost the card.
Okay.
Or
Here's-
misplaced the card.
Be careful, because when you start talking about that, it's biblical. I mean, it truly, and I hate to bring this into it, but
So we need to tattoo it on their forehead or on their car.
Oh, no, let's just
Now
put it on a
we
little
got the
chip
biblical
and
thing doing
embed it in their arm.
Oh,
a
gee.
chip.
The mark of the
chip.
beast right there.
Right,
Oh, God, I never thought that would come up.
And they're always funky, especially the Norwegian.
Little Joey is not going to make a big purchase, so if you want to send me,
You
you
know-
got to get a loaf of bread.
No.
That's another reason not to have the card. If you don't have it, you can't lose it.
The poor are not losing their, whatever they call those cards they got right now to get.
EBT.
Think about it,
That's
their card,
They're
what I
not
call it.
losing those
No, they're
cards.
not.
Oh,
losing
they
it.
still get
Their
their
cards
their
are
food
there.
stamp
I
card.
went to the
Yeah,
site,
they would
filled it
still
out,
get
tried to figure
that.
out if I could get away with it.
Right?
No.
No, they wouldn't get their food stamp card?
Food stamps are...
Yes, they would, because
they would,
that's
Because
not...
it's not
that's
anything
But
wrong with that.
they're not losing that, and they sure as hell wouldn't be losing one that,
Okay,
Now we can...
Or Joey can go buy the bread.
Once we can get honest politicians and a fair tax system, then we can work on doing things like getting rid of that other stuff.
Now you're talking.
Well, but that's
sci-fi.
also a way to get voter ID. Have everyone get a voter ID card would be to offer each one $50 or $100. Everybody who brings in a voter ID, a picture voter ID, gets $100. Everybody who complains about, them not, it's a hardship on them to do that.
They would
they'd have
find a
it
way.
changed. Oh yeah, they'd be there in a half hour with their hand out for the $100.
They all have to have a ID card to go get a card at the Virgin River to player's card, and they don't have a problem with that.
yeah, but they're using someone else's social and
Yeah,
someone
that's
else's.
Joey in the house.
You know.
We all use Joey's card.
You know, I gotta tell you, just because we're talking about taxes, about 2 years ago, my son called me up, he lives up in Montana, and he called me up and he'd heard from the IRS about this tax payment that was made on his, with his social and that, out of Arkansas. And so he gets investigating it, because he's got nothing really else to do. And turns out it's an illegal alien that stole his social.
No.
And actually did pay taxes. And what the IRS did is just credit it towards his taxes.
Oh.
That was pretty cool.
Now, that's the other way of dinging the system.
Yeah,
That's the
I kind of went...
That's identity theft in reverse.
But he worked for like Tyson Chicken, which is another reason not to buy Tyson Chicken.
Because your son worked there?
No. They only hire illegal aliens.
The people in Arkansas work at the place.
Illegal in
It's too cold to grow chickens in Montana.
They're funny little chickens, aren't they?
Okay, so changing the subject just a little bit, you know, when people say, oh, we have to raise the minimum wage, tell them, well, why do people employ illegal aliens? Because they'll work for less. Why? So why don't you just get rid of the minimum wage? And then there's no draw to have illegal aliens do the work. You can pay the same amount for, well, Americans won't do that job. Yeah, I said, no, Americans will do about any job if you give them enough money to do it.
Right.
Yep.
Look how many of our teenagers now can't find anything to do.
College graduates.
That's terrible.
Minimum wage laws are the most racially discriminative laws in this country. Over 25% of black youth cannot find work because they're just... They're, you know, they get...
Some cities it's
Is
over
there a
30.
movement or
They get, I mean, they get screwed over by the government schools. They don't have an education. They don't have the ability to produce enough to make the minimum wage of, you know, a going thing for employers. They can't go anywhere.
Information on this stuff.
Now, conspiracy theorists, and we may have even talked about this, but
Steve's
Obama's
exactly right
army,
there. The interest for keeping the system in place are
Army,
too many
no,
people.
army,
Oh,
the
yeah.
people
Too many
Oh, yeah,
congressmen,
that's what I
senators,
think.
beholden to
Who
I think
can't
the
find work,
young
that
people,
want
the young
special tax.
people.
he'll forgive their,
he'll forgive their,
Not realizing they
student
probably
loans
be
if they'll
better
come
off
in
if
and
the
do
tax code wasn't
military
there.
time
Uh-huh.
in the new army.
You mean the civilian army that
Yes.
is well equipped and as the military
All of those
army?
kids sitting out there.
and they're already indoctrinated, they're fully indoctrinated